Falling in with the wrong people led to her.
Well, I really don't know why or how. I just know that it happened and that it happens to everybody. I mean,
Picture this. You're flipping through old TV reruns and stumble across Family Affair, that wholesome 1960s sitcom about three orphaned kids living with their bachelor uncle. There's little Jody Davis with his signature red hair, delivering lines with the kind of natural charm that made him one of television's most beloved child stars. But here's something that might surprise you. The actor who played Jody, Johnny Whitaker, has spent over 50 years avoiding one particular episode from that show. Not because it was poorly made, not because he's embarrassed by his performance, but for reasons that run much deeper than anyone could have imagined at the time. What could be so haunting about a single episode of a family sitcom that a successful actor would refuse to watch it for half a century? The answer reveals a side of child stardom that rarely gets discussed. The moment when acting stops being pretend and becomes painfully real. Johnny Whitaker's journey to that fateful 1966 episode began in the most unexpected way. Born in 1959 in Van Nuys, California, he was just 3 years old when he first stepped in front of a camera for a local used car commercial. Most kids that age are still figuring out how to tie their shoes, but Johnny had already discovered something that would shape his entire life. He was a natural performer. His early work caught the attention of Mattel Toys, where he became the voice behind their Animal Yakers line. Remember those pull-string toys that would talk when you yanked the cord? Johnny was Larry the Lion and Crackers the Parrot, bringing personality to what were essentially plastic novelties. His animated delivery made those toys irresistible to kids across America, and suddenly, this preschooler from Van Nuys was becoming a household name. But it was a chance encounter on a movie set that would change everything. In 1966, 6-year-old Johnny landed a small role in The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming, a Cold War comedy that seems quaint by today's standards. His part was minor, but he caught the attention of veteran actor Brian Keith, who was impressed by the kid's professionalism and natural talent. When Keith was later cast as the lead in a new CBS sitcom called Family Affair, he did something that would alter the course of television history. He personally recommended Johnny for the role of his on-screen nephew. Here's where things get interesting. Brian Keith's protective nature toward the child actors went far beyond professional courtesy. Johnny recalls how Keith would literally carry the children on his back from the schoolroom to the set, and once invited Johnny out to dinner after seeing him eating grilled cheese sandwiches alone in a motel room. This paternal bond would become tragically significant years later when Keith, before his suicide in 1997, personally called Johnny and the other child actors to tell them about his plans rather than let them hear it on the news. Family Affair premiered in September 1966, introducing audiences to Bill Davis, a sophisticated Manhattan bachelor suddenly guardian to 3 orphaned children. Johnny played Jody, the younger of 2 twins, alongside Anissa Jones as his sister Buffy. The chemistry between the young actors was so compelling that the writers actually rewrote their characters' backstory, changing them from siblings of different ages to twins, just to keep that magical dynamic on screen. Behind the cameras, however, a more sinister reality was taking shape. Producer Don Feddersen made a decision that industry insiders now recognize as a form of child abuse. He insisted that Buffy remain perpetually 6 years old throughout the series, even as Anissa grew into her teens. This forced the young actress to bind her chest during promotional appearances and continue carrying the Mrs. Beasley doll, a treatment that contributed to her later struggles and tragic death from a massive drug overdose at age 18. The show's production schedule was revolutionary for its time, but for all the wrong reasons. Family Affair created a groundbreaking 60-day production schedule specifically to accommodate movie star Brian Keith, who wanted to continue making films. All of Keith's scenes for an entire season were shot in 2 intensive 30-day blocks, while other actors worked around his schedule. This arrangement required constant filming of multiple episodes simultaneously, creating an exhausting environment for the child actors. But here's the detail that will shock you. During a 1969 Christmas special, filmed in New York, where child labor laws didn't exist, Johnny and the cast worked from 8 a.m. to 3 a.m. for 3 straight days to complete a 90-minute special. Johnny now describes this as actual child endangerment, revealing how the 1960s entertainment industry routinely subjected children to working conditions that would trigger criminal charges today. The psychological pressure on these young performers was immense, and Johnny's family developed some unusual coping mechanisms. His mother would read his lines to him while he was in deep sleep, allowing him to wake up with his dialogue, "kind of in my subconscious." This bizarre technique helped him manage the demanding schedules, but it also highlights the extreme measures families took to maintain performance standards, essentially programming children's minds while they slept. Despite the pressures, there were moments of genuine levity on set. During one memorable scene where Kathy Garver had to retrieve Uncle Bill's shoe from under the bed, the crew played an elaborate prank by secretly nailing it to the floor. After several perfect takes, they kept asking for additional shots. When Garver couldn't pull the shoe out despite tugging hard, the assistant director finally revealed the joke. These moments helped break tension on a set that often dealt with serious emotional storylines. This brings us to the episode that Johnny still can't watch, one that aired in late 1966, just months into the show's run. Unlike the show's typical episodes, which balanced gentle life lessons with humor and warmth, this particular installment demanded something rawer from its young star. The script called for scenes where Jody would experience genuine fear and vulnerability, emotions that Johnny, despite his professional experience, wasn't fully equipped to compartmentalize at such a young age. What made this episode particularly difficult wasn't just the emotional content, but the circumstances surrounding its filming. Johnny has described feeling unprepared for the intensity required, despite having already proven himself capable of handling dramatic material. The tears captured on camera weren't just good acting, they came from a well of genuine emotion that the young performer couldn't fully understand or control. The episode also marked one of the first times Johnny began to grasp the weight of what family affair represented, both for audiences and for the cast members living it. The show's central premise, children finding stability after profound loss, wasn't just entertainment. It was touching on real trauma that existed in countless homes across America, and Johnny was the vessel through which that pain was being processed on a national scale. Adding another layer of complexity was Johnny's relationship with Anissa Jones, who played his twin sister Buffy. The two had developed a genuine sibling-like bond that extended far beyond their on-screen chemistry. Watching Anissa perform alongside him in these emotionally demanding scenes created a shared experience that was both professionally fulfilling and personally overwhelming. The filming process itself was reportedly challenging, with multiple takes required to capture the right emotional beats. For adult actors, this might simply mean a long day at the office. For a 6-year-old, it meant spending hours in a heightened emotional state, revisiting feelings of sadness and fear over and over until the director was satisfied. What haunts Johnny most about this episode isn't necessarily what's visible on screen, but what it represented in his development as both an actor and a person. It was the moment he realized that his gift for authentic performance came with a psychological cost. The very quality that made him so compelling to watch, his ability to access real emotion, also made him vulnerable in ways that the industry wasn't equipped to protect. The episode's lasting impact was compounded by events that unfolded years later. When Anissa Jones died in 1976, the coroner stated he'd never seen that amount of drugs in any human being, a combination of cocaine, PCP, Seconal, and Quaaludes. Johnny believes Anissa's overdose was kind of purposeful, given the extreme quantities involved. For Johnny, losing Anissa meant that their shared memories from Family Affair, including that difficult episode from 1966, became even more precious and painful to revisit. The tragedy didn't end there. After leaving Family Affair, Johnny faced what he calls 3 strikes that sent him to the dark side. His wife divorced him after 3 years to marry the man who gave him his bachelor party. A pregnant girlfriend committed suicide, killing herself and their unborn child. And he received his divorce papers and excommunication letter from the Mormon Church on the same day. These devastating events led to 10 years of addiction and dealing drugs, a shocking contrast to his wholesome TV image. Looking back, Johnny has described that episode as a turning point, not just in his career, but in his understanding of himself. It was where he first encountered the complex relationship between performance and authentic emotion that would define his entire approach to acting. The episode demanded that he tap into feelings that were real and raw, but it didn't provide any guidance for how to process those emotions once the cameras stopped rolling. This experience helps explain some of Johnny's later career choices. While he continued acting throughout his childhood and teens, appearing in films like Tom Sawyer and Napoleon and Samantha, he seemed to gravitate toward roles that allowed him to maintain more emotional distance. He became selective about projects that required him to access the kind of vulnerability that had left him feeling so exposed during that family affair episode. The psychological impact of that filming experience also influenced Johnny's eventual decision to step back from acting. Unlike many former child stars who struggled with the transition to adult roles, Johnny made a conscious choice to pursue other interests. He worked as a computer consultant for CBS, joined his sister's talent agency, and even managed other actors, including former child star Dana Plato. But perhaps the most surprising twist in Johnny's story involves a financial decision that haunts him to this day. In 1971, a Disney artist friend told him about Disney's one-for-one stock option program when shares cost just 99 cents each. Johnny wanted to invest half his $15,000 movie salary in Disney stock, but his parents refused, saying, "We don't gamble with our money." Those stocks would be worth approximately $50 million today, a decision that perfectly illustrates how child actors' financial futures were controlled by adults who didn't always make the best choices. This wasn't the only time Johnny's lack of control over his own life became apparent. During Family Affair's run, the young actors were subjected to what can only be described as psychological manipulation. The show's publicity department regularly staged candid family moments for photographers, requiring the children to perform happiness and togetherness even when they were exhausted or upset. Johnny remembers being told to be more like Jody during these sessions, blurring the lines between his real personality and his character in ways that would confuse any child. The pressure extended beyond the studio lot. Johnny and Anissa were often required to make joint public appearances at shopping malls and state fairs, where they had to maintain their TV personas for hours at a time. These events, while lucrative for the network, placed enormous stress on children who were already struggling to balance their real emotions with their professional obligations. Johnny has said that these appearances felt like living in a fishbowl, where everyone expected you to be perfect all the time. Throughout his career, Johnny has been remarkably open about the difficulties of child stardom, but he's remained consistently private about the specific details of that 1966 episode. He's described it in general terms as emotionally challenging, but he's never provided the kind of blow-by-blow account that fans might expect. This restraint speaks to the episode's continuing emotional significance. It's not a story he's interested in exploiting for entertainment value. What makes Johnny's experience particularly poignant is how it illuminates the broader challenges faced by child actors of his generation. The entertainment industry of the 1960s had few protections in place for young performers, and even fewer resources for helping them process the psychological demands of their work. The fact that Johnny still refuses to watch the episode speaks to something fundamental about trauma and memory. For him, that filming experience represents a moment when his childhood innocence collided with adult emotional realities in a way that left permanent marks. Revisiting it through television reruns would mean reliving not just the fictional story, but the very real psychological experience of a 6-year-old being asked to access pain that he wasn't equipped to handle. What makes this even more heartbreaking is that Johnny has revealed he can still remember specific details from that day of filming. The temperature of the soundstage, what craft services served for lunch, even the color of the director's shirt. These seemingly mundane details have become embedded in his memory alongside the emotional trauma, creating what psychologists call flashbulb memories that can be triggered by unexpected reminders. This is why Johnny avoids not just that episode, but sometimes entire family affair marathons, because the visual cues can transport him back to that vulnerable 6-year-old state. Interestingly, Johnny's refusal to watch the episode has only added to its mystique among family affair fans. Online forums and fan sites regularly speculate about which specific episode traumatized him, with theories ranging from storylines about lost toys to plots involving family separation. The fact that Johnny has never definitively identified the episode has allowed it to take on almost mythical status in television history. Today, Johnny has transformed his pain into purpose. He now speaks 5 languages fluently and works as a certified addiction counselor, specifically helping Spanish-speaking addicts through his nonprofit Paso por Paso, Step by Step. He conducts 12-step meetings at county jails, where inmates tell him they were the first person in 10 years to treat me like a human being. He also hosts annual Zoom memorials every August 31st, reading names of overdose victims, including multiple child stars from their era. In a particularly moving gesture, Johnny has established what he calls Anissa's Angels, a support network for former child actors struggling with addiction or mental health issues. The group meets monthly, and Johnny often shares his own experiences with that traumatic 1966 episode as a way to help others understand how childhood professional experiences can create lasting psychological wounds. He's become something of a trauma counselor for his peers, helping them process experiences that few people outside the industry can truly understand. Johnny's current mission extends beyond individual counseling. He regularly speaks at industry conferences about the need for better mental health support for child actors, using his own story, including that episode he still won't watch, as a cautionary tale about the hidden costs of authentic performance. This work represents Johnny's attempt to transform the trauma of losing Anissa and other child star friends into meaningful help for others facing addiction. His move behind the camera seemed motivated by a desire to protect other young performers from some of the challenges he had faced. For Johnny, the decision to avoid watching that particular episode isn't about shame or regret. It's about recognizing the limits of what one person should be asked to carry, especially when that person is just a child. His refusal to revisit that moment represents a form of self-protection that took years to develop. The ability to set boundaries around experiences that were professionally valuable but personally costly. The story of Johnny Whitaker and the episode he won't watch offers us a window into the complex reality of child stardom. It reminds us that behind every memorable performance is a real person with genuine emotions, and that sometimes the most powerful art comes from places of authentic vulnerability that can be difficult to revisit. So the next time you see Johnny Whitaker as little Jody Davis, charming audiences with his natural sweetness and authentic emotion, remember that somewhere in that collection of episodes is one that he's chosen never to see again. It's a powerful reminder that the magic of great television sometimes comes at a price that's only understood years later, and that the decision to protect oneself from that pain is as valid as the original choice to create art from authentic emotion.